You could feel the anger tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township. The board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances, while the township supervisor.
Fox 32 has investigated Henyard's use of a police security detail, taking officers off the street and costing.
In most American towns, a mayor is more than just a politician. They're a neighbor, a trusted face, someone you might bump into at the store or hear speaking at your kid's school assembly. But in one quiet town, just south of Chicago, that familiar role has morphed into something far more disturbing. In Dalton, Illinois, the person chosen to lead and safeguard the community is now at the center of a controversy so deep, so tangled, it's hard to see, where bad decisions stop and criminal behavior begins. This isn't fiction. It's not some overblown internet theory or a viral rumor spreading through social media. It's real. And what's happening here goes beyond any scandal you've seen on cable news. Because this time, it didn't just damage reputations, it fractured the very foundation of a community. And at the center of it all is Mayor Tiffany Henyard, once celebrated as a symbol of progress and inclusion. But beneath that polished surface lies a disturbing pattern of dishonesty, self-gain, and actions that many believe have brought Dalton to its knees.
The government always does it, is to go and investigate people around her, and that's what they're doing.
It didn't come without warning signs. Not too long ago, she was caught attempting to steal a car, hardly the kind of headline you'd expect for someone who'd later become the town's most powerful figure. But voters either didn't know, didn't ask, or never got the full story before casting their ballots. And that, in itself, reveals something deeply unsettling about the state of public trust. That someone with a history like that could not only run, but win, speaks to a serious breakdown in both oversight and accountability. But this story doesn't end with a single poor choice or a buried past. As time moves on,
and that is the finding of an investigation of village finances and the spending habits of beleaguered mayor.
Rumors turned into investigations, and the accusations were chilling. Quiet talks of ties to organized crime, suspected deals with local gangs, whispers that decisions made in the mayor's office weren't just unethical, they were dangerous. This wasn't the typical shady politics people have come to expect. This was something more sinister. It felt like the town was under a silent siege. And then it got worse. Reports began surfacing. The supermayor, the so-called people's mayor and community supervisor, was now presiding over a shrinking police force. Officers were quietly reassigned, budgets slashed, emergency response times ballooned, and all of it was happening under an administration claiming to prioritize public safety. But why dismantle the one thing standing between the people and disorder? Who gains when the protectors lose their power? The question gripped the entire town. As crime climbed and fear spread, the mayor's political opponents began.
Not guilty of all 9 counts. I believe he's cooperating. And if you cooperate, you have to admit your guilt.
These weren't just threats. This was real danger. In one of the most chilling moments of this unfolding saga, bullets hit the homes of those who dared to speak out. Fear began to seep deep into Dalton's foundation. This had moved far beyond corruption. Now, it was about survival. People weren't debating policies anymore. They were terrified for their lives. And while fear spread through the community, the mayor's priorities seemed to drift even further from her responsibilities. In a surreal twist, officers weren't assigned to patrol the streets or investigate crimes. Instead, they were pulled off duty to drive Henyard around on shopping trips. Police became chauffeurs, assistants, and personal security for a mayor, who acted more like royalty ruling over a crumbling kingdom. All while taxpayers footed the bill, the streets grew quieter but not safer. That silence wasn't peace, it was abandonment. And then came a moment so bizarre it bordered on satire. Henyard was caught on camera shoveling the driveway of a political rival, smiling for the media, pretending to be the caring public servant. But in context, it felt like mockery. Not generosity, not leadership. Just a staged moment for the cameras, while the town behind her fell apart. It was petty politics dressed as charity, and nobody was fooled. Zoom out, and the damage is undeniable. This isn't just a failure of leadership, it's a betrayal of humanity. Families, workers, children. Real people were left behind. Dalton's resources were hijacked, its safety dismantled, its pride openly mocked by the very person sworn to defend it. They gave her their trust, and in return, they got theater, chaos, and fear. But the biggest tragedy isn't just the scandal, it's the silence that follows. It's the everyday residents left behind in the wreckage, the single parents wondering why police never show, the elderly too afraid to leave their homes after sunset, the kids growing up believing that public service just means serving yourself. They carry the burden now, and they wait. For justice, for answers, for someone to make it right. Dalton may be small, but its cry for help echoes loudly. And if nothing changes, this won't be remembered as a local failure. It'll stand as a national warning, a cautionary tale of what happens when power is handed to someone who thinks they're above the very people they were elected to serve, because the image of a friendly, familiar leader has been shattered, replaced with something far more threatening. In Dalton, Illinois, the person trusted to protect the people now stands at the center of a scandal so deep, it's hard to tell where poor decisions end and criminal intent begins. This isn't fiction. It's not some wild internet rumor or neighborhood myth. It's happening. And it's worse than anything you've seen on the nightly news. Because this time, it didn't just destroy reputations, it tore apart the safety net of an entire town. At the center of it all stands Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Her rise once symbolized change, hope, representation. But behind the image was a disturbing pattern of deception, entitlement, and choices that many say brought Dalton to the edge. And those red flags, they weren't hidden. Not long ago, she was caught attempting to steal a car. Not exactly the resume you'd expect for a town's top official. But people didn't know, didn't question, or never got the full truth when it mattered most, and that alone says something heartbreaking about civic trust. That someone with that kind of past could not only run but win points to serious failures in transparency and oversight. But this story doesn't begin and end with one bad choice or a concealed past. As the months rolled on, whispers became investigations, and the allegations, they were chilling. Hints of organized crime, connections, possible ties to gangs, claims that the decisions coming from the mayor's office weren't just unethical, they were dangerous. This wasn't shady politics as usual. This was something much darker, like a town slowly taken over from within, and it didn't stop there. The police force, the one shield standing between order and chaos, was quietly dismantled. Officers reassigned, budgets slashed, response times delayed. All while the administration claimed to prioritize public safety. But who benefits when the protectors are stripped of their power? That question haunted everyone. All of this unfolded under an administration that claimed to prioritize community, safety. But why would someone deliberately weaken the very system meant to protect their town from chaos? Who stands to gain when the defenders are stripped of their power? That question haunted everyone in Dalton. As crime surged and fear grew, the mayor's political rivals began receiving threats, not just empty words, but real, tangible danger. In one of the most harrowing moments of this scandal, bullets shattered the homes of those brave enough to stand against her. You could almost feel the fear settling deep within the town. This was no longer a story about corruption, it was a fight for survival. People weren't just disagreeing over policies, they were terrified for their lives. While the town descended into turmoil, the mayor's priorities became even more detached from the needs of the community. In an almost surreal twist, police officers were pulled from active duty, not to investigate crimes or patrol the streets, but to chauffeur Henyard around on personal shopping trips. Officers weren't enforcers of the law anymore. They were bodyguards, assistants, personal drivers for a queen ruling over a crumbling empire, and all of it funded by taxpayers. Meanwhile, the streets fell silent. Only that silence didn't bring safety. It carried the weight of abandonment. Then came a moment so bizarre it would have seemed like satire if it weren't so real. Henyard was caught on camera shoveling the driveway of a political opponent, grinning for the press, playing the role of the compassionate leader. But in context, it felt like a mockery. It wasn't kindness. It was a carefully orchestrated show, for the cameras while the town suffered in the background. What the public saw as charity was nothing more than petty politics disguised as goodwill. No one was fooled. When you take a step back and assess the damage, one truth becomes undeniable. This isn't just a tale of failed leadership. It's a betrayal of trust at the most personal level. Families, workers, children, real everyday people were left to fend for themselves as Dalton's resources were siphoned off. Their safety was stripped away and their dignity trampled. By the very person sworn to protect them, they placed their trust in her. And in return, they got nothing but spectacle, chaos, and fear. But the real tragedy? It's not just the scandal itself. It's the silence that follows in its wake. The parents who still wonder why the police never show up. The elderly residents who can't leave their homes after dark without fearing for their safety. The children who are learning that public service doesn't always mean serving the public. It often means serving yourself. These are the people who carry the burden. And now they wait for justice, for accountability, for someone, anyone, to make it right. Because Dalton may be small, but its cry for help is deafening. And if nothing changes, this won't be just a local failure. It will stand as a national warning. A warning about what happens when power is given to those who believe they're above the very people they were meant to serve.